let's talk about why they're important for you as a parent. Why does it matter if your child is engaging in the trajectory schema or the enveloping schema? Well, once you start to recognise these patterns, parenting becomes a lot less frustrating and it can be a lot more fun. Kia ora, hello, I'm Ruth Burko, a teacher turned mum here on a mission to demystify child's play through understanding play schemas. If you've ever found yourself asking, why is my child doing that? Whether it's throwing their soft toys, hiding stones around the house, or lining up their crayons, then you're in the right place, and certainly not alone. Here, we'll explore the magic of play through the lens of play schemas, those hidden, repeated patterns in your child's behaviour that holds the key to unlocking more meaningful play and connection. Through understanding play schemas, you'll be able to move beyond those one-off activities and understand the why behind your child's play. Join me each week as we dive into playful insights that will help you bring more joy, connection, and understanding into your parenting journey and set the stage for a lifetime of learning. Let's dive on in. Welcome back. We're starting to get the ball rolling with episode 2 of Play Schemas, Demystifying Child's Play. Now, if you've never heard of play schemas before, don't worry, you are not alone. By the end of this episode, you'll not only have an overview of what they are, but I'm sure that you'll start seeing your child's repetitive behaviour in a completely different light. You'll start to understand what's really going on when they're throwing their toys, moving objects from room to room, or spinning around in circles. So, whether you're out on a walk, catching a rare moment of quiet, or multitasking around the house, let's dive on in. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, let's start with the basics. What are play schemas? So, imagine it's late in the afternoon, your toddler is tossing their toys across the room and you're wondering, why can't they just play nicely? Or maybe you've noticed that your child loves to take objects from one place to another, constantly moving toys from the living room to the kitchen and back again. Or not. Sound familiar? Well, you're not alone. I've been there too. As parents, we often wonder what is going on in their brain. And here's the good news. There's actually a reason for these behaviours, and it's something called play schemas. A play schema is essentially a repeated pattern of behaviour that children engage in as they explore and learn. It's like a blueprint for how they interact with the world around them, making connections and linking things up. They're not random or meaningless. Far from it. These schemas are like the building blocks of learning. Every time your child throws, stacks, hides, paws, spins, they're creating mental models of how things function. These actions are helping them understand concepts like gravity, space, cause and effect. So while it may look like chaos, there is actually a lot of learning happening behind the scenes. Once you start to recognise these play schemas, you'll begin to see your child's actions in a whole new light. It might help you to breathe a little bit easier. Okay, now that we've briefly covered what play schemas are, let's talk about the specific types of schemas you might notice in your child's play. There are 10 main play schemas that your child may explore, and they could be doing several of them at once or focus intensely on one for a period of time. As I walk you through these, what I'd love for you to do is think about whether any of these behaviours sound familiar. Chances are you've seen at least a few of them in your child's play without even realising. And no, I'm not going to ask you to stop what you're doing, go run and grab a pen and paper and take intense notes. I know what it's like. Instead, I've created a cheat sheet which briefly outlines the 10 most common play schemas, and it is free. If this sounds a little bit like what you need, head to playschemas.com/free to nab it. That's play, schemas.com/free. Okay, for each one, I'll be covering what you might see your child doing or how to spot it, what you can do to support the schema, and why it matters. And remember, we're just doing an overview. I'm going to go through them quickly so you can always replay. Okay, let's dive in. I'm going to start with one of the most common ones, which is the trajectory schema. This is when your child is fascinated by how things move through the air, whether it's throwing, dropping, pushing objects. If your child has ever thrown their food off their table or love pushing cards down a ramp, they're probably exploring the trajectory schema. Now, I know this one can be frustrating. I've been there when it feels like everything ends up on the floor. But when you think about it from your child's perspective, what they're learning about is gravity, force, and motion. They're experimenting with concepts that are actually the building blocks of physics. So the next time your child is tossing their toys around, try to see it as them practicing their future physics skills. Okay, so what could you do with this one? Play a game of catch with soft balls, either in the air or rolling them along the ground if they're younger. You could build ramps for toy cars to roll down. You could set up target practice with baskets for them to toss toys into. They could sit on a seat and be allowed to drop things in baskets either side. So why does this one matter? This kind of play helps your children learn about cause and effect. It gives them physically hands-on understanding about movement and gravity. Okay, let's go into the next one, transporting schema. Now, how would you see this? It's when your child enjoys moving things from one place to another. Their toys, rocks, snacks. If they're moving them, it's the transporting schema. So what could you do with this one? Set up a delivery game where they transport toys in a bucket or wagon. You could encourage them to collect and carry items like blocks or leaves. Maybe when you're finished doing the groceries, you could let them help you carry small household items inside. You could ask them to help tidy up. So why does this one matter? This schema helps your child understand space, organisation, and movement, all while improving their problem-solving skills. Okay, number 3 is the enveloping schema. This is when your child loves wrapping things up, like their favourite toy, or even themselves in blankets, or they're constantly putting things in containers. This is when you're seeing the enveloping schema. So what can you do with this one? Give them things they can use again and again to wrap up their toys, such as scarves or fabric. You could let them build forts with blankets or cushions. You could set up boxes for them to hide things inside. Why this one matters is it's all about exploring boundaries and feeling secure. It's your child's way of understanding containment and protection. Okay, next we're going to go to rotation schema. How are you going to spot this? This is when your child loves spinning objects or twirling themselves in circles. This is when the rotation schema is at play. What you could do is offer them spinning tops or toys with wheels. My boys love having the bike on the side and going around with that one. You can encourage them to roll balls or spin in a safe space. If you're at the playground, you could use a merry-go-round or spin on the office chair. Why this one matters? Rotation helps your child develop a sense of balance and coordination, laying the groundwork for more complex motor skills. Okay, halfway there. Let's go number 5. We're going to talk about the connecting schema. So this is when your child loves connecting things, whether it's linking toys or tying strings together or building with blocks. They're exploring the connecting schema. So what could you do? Use building sets like Lego or Duplo or magnetic blocks. You could let them make chains using string or paper clips or tape. You could use train tracks. You could encourage them to build bridges with everyday items. Why does this one matter? The schema is all about problem solving and fine motor skills, both of which are critical as they grow. Playing this kind of way helps them build their problem solving skills and is also a key for understanding relationships between objects. They're learning about how things fit together, both physically and conceptually. Okay, number 6 is closely related to the connecting schema, which you may have guessed is the disconnecting schema. If you've heard about schemas before, you may have heard these two schemas lumped together. But if you've been in a room where one child is working on the connecting schema and the other child is working on the disconnecting schema, you will know, potentially through the tears and tantrums, these schemas can be very different. Okay, so how are you going to spot this schema? So rather than connecting, they're taking things apart. Whether it's pulling apart the Lego or Duplo or blocks, maybe they're taking apart puzzles or they're knocking down towers that they or someone else has built. This is the disconnecting schema in action. So what can you do? Provide the toys like blocks, Lego, Duplo, tiles that can easily be taken apart and then reassembled. You could introduce simple puzzles or items with removable parts to encourage their curiosity about how things come together and come apart. You can let them safely experiment with everyday objects, like taking lids off containers or breaking down their own play structures, or you could build something for them. Why does this matter? The disconnecting schema helps children understand how objects fit together and come apart. This again builds problem-solving skills and fine motor development and fosters an early understanding of construction and deconstruction, which is a key future skill in engineering and science and really everyday life. Again, it's about understanding how things relate to each other, but this time, rather than connecting, they're focused on how things come apart. Okay, let's move on to the enclosure schema. Children who are engaged in the enclosure schema are fascinated by putting things inside other things. So how would you spot this? Does your child build walls with blocks to put things inside? Or do they put things inside containers? Do they play inside small spaces? Do they draw circles around their pictures? This is the enclosure schema. So what you could do, build little houses with blocks or boxes. You could offer toys with compartments like those shape sorters or stacking cups. You could create cozy spaces in your house with pillows or blankets for them to explore. So why does this one matter? This is again, like the enveloping one, your child is learning about boundaries and the concept of inside versus outside, which is foundational for all their spatial awareness. Okay, number 8 is the orientation schema. Kids who love this schema are ones who love exploring different perspectives. So how you can spot it? This is when your child might like tilting their head to look at things from different angles, or maybe they lie on the floor, inside or outside, to look at the world upside down. Or maybe they throw themselves backwards when you're holding them. Or is it just mine? That is the orientation schema at work. What you can do with this one is encourage activities where your child can change their perspective, like rolling on the floor, down a hill, or looking through mirrors. You could take them outside and explore different viewpoints. You could look at the sky from the ground or observe objects from high and low angles. You could play What Do You See games, where you encourage them to describe how things might look from different angles. Why it matters? The orientation schema helps children develop spatial awareness and a sense of perspective. This foundational skill will support later abilities in problem solving, creativity, and even understanding geometry. Okay, we're nearly there. Number 9 is the transforming schema. This is when your child becomes fascinated with the changing state of objects. It might look like mixing water with dirt to make mud, stirring ingredients to create a new substance, or even tearing paper into smaller pieces. The child is focused on how things transform from one to another, whether it's through physical manipulation or combining elements. So what could you do? This is where mess might come in. You can provide opportunities for sensory play, like mixing water and sand or flour. You could engage in cooking and baking activities where ingredients change when they're combined or heated. You could provide safe materials for cutting, tearing, or folding to explore transformations. You could explore art projects that involve transformation, like painting over another colour or working with Play-Doh. Why this one matters? The transporting schema supports children's understanding of cause and effect, scientific principles, and creativity. It helps them grasp how materials can change and form, which lays the groundwork for problem solving and critical thinking skills in the future. Okay, finally, last but not least, the positioning schema. This one you might see in yourself. So how are you going to spot this one? This is when your child is obsessed with placing objects in specific order or patterns. It might look like they're lining up toys in a row, stacking blocks in a perfect tower, or arranging things in a very particular way, maybe grouping by colour or size. So what can you do? You could encourage sorting games with blocks or other small items. You could work together to create patterns using toys or natural materials like leaves, stones, shells. You could let them organise their toys in a way that makes sense to them. You could get them involved in tidying up. It's great to put this schema to work in everyday contexts. But in saying this, just because they may not be working through the positioning schema, that does not mean they've got an excuse for not helping to tidy up. Okay, so why does the positioning schema matter? The positioning schema helps children understand order and organisation, structure, balance, categorisation, which will later support in skills like maths and science. Okay, I know I've covered a lot in a short amount of time, but don't worry, you do not need to retain it all. I know brain fog too well. You could listen to this again, or remember you can grab the free cheat sheet. Just head to playschemas.com/free to nab it. That's play, schemas.com/free. Okay, so now that you have an understanding of the different types of play schemas, let's talk about why they're important for you as a parent. Why does it matter if your child is engaging in the trajectory schema or the enveloping schema? Well, once you start to recognise these patterns, parenting becomes a lot less frustrating and it can be a lot more fun. Instead of seeing throwing or mess making as something annoying or problematic, that they're being naughty, you can start to see it as a crucial part of your child's learning. For example, when my oldest was 2 years old, he went through a phase where he absolutely loved throwing himself backwards when I was holding him. Now, luckily from carrying kids around, I felt like I had pretty good upper body strength. But I was also pregnant with my second, just coming into the third trimester. So you can imagine that trying to hold a toddler who was throwing themselves backwards all the time was no easy matter. I tried to explain to him that he wasn't able to do that with mum, that it was better to do it with dad. But that didn't always register. Why could he not do now something that he was used to doing before? It was a schema that he'd been working through for a while. When I'd recognise it was the positioning schema, I was able to put other things in place to help him meet that need. I would pick him up off the floor upside down and have him hang his head over the couch while we read books. Or I would make sure my husband would actively give him time to throw himself backwards when they were at home and they could play together. So instead of trying to stop the behaviour or redirect to something he didn't want to do, we started looking for ways to support it. Suddenly what had become frustrating became fun. And the best part, I had reframed my frustration to remember that he was learning the whole time. When you recognise play schemas, you stop managing behaviour and start partnering with your child in their learning journey. So, I'm sure you're wondering, how can you support play schemas at home? The good news is it doesn't take a lot of effort or expensive toys. As I've said before, it's often the simplest activities that are the most effective. Here are 3 things to get you started. So, create opportunities for exploring the play schemas. If your child is exploring trajectory, provide soft objects they can safely throw. You could set up a mini bowling game or give them targets to aim at. For the transporting, buckets or bags to carry things from room to room. Be aware of what schema they're in and think about how you can promote that. And with that, number 2, make friendly areas that they can work in, where you have things set up to explore those schemas. So if it's enveloping, in that area there could be boxes and blankets or containers for hiding toys. If it's the connecting schema, you could have blocks or train sets or puzzles. It can be a great way of letting them to explore how things fit together in one place. Number 3, observe without interrupting. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just watch. I know it can be hard sometimes to step back when you want to direct their play, but often the most powerful learning happens when children are left to explore on their own. When you start to recognise the play schemas, you'll feel more confident in giving them the space to dive deep into their natural interests and their learning urges. So, why should you care about all this? Why should you care about all play schemas? Well, understanding play schemas will help you unlock the why behind your child's behaviour. You'll start seeing the brilliance behind the mess, and you can guide your child in playways that feel way more purposeful. You're no longer just keeping them entertained, you're helping them to develop their critical thinking skills, problem-solving abilities, and emotional regulation and awareness. And what the best part is? You are building a deeper bond with your child through this, because you can be joining with them in their learning journey. Or you're letting them have a break on their own to play and you can get onto other things. Okay, thank you so much for joining on today's episode of Demystifying Child's Play through Play Schemas. I look forward to you joining me in the next episode as we start to unpack our frustrations in parenting and how knowing about play schemas can help this. I hope you're taking into your day new ideas and insights to help you connect with your child through play in meaningful and fun ways. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss out on future tips, strategies, and those aha moments, and then share it with other parents and caregivers who are also ready to explore the power of play. If you want to dive in more, head to the blog at playschemas.com/002 for the show notes and any bonuses attached to this episode. That's playschemas.com/002. And hey, I would love to hear your playtime stories. Whether you're celebrating a win or trying to crack the mystery behind a new behaviour, I'm here for it. Reach out on social media or drop me a message. Until next time, let's say it together. Today is a great day to play.